Let me take this time to welcome you all to our new series entitled Search the Word. We're going to delve into a journey of discovery, a journey of learning what God's Word says about various topics and titles and issues of life. But before we get there, I would like us to take a bit of our time today to talk about why we are going to talk about the Bible, why we're going to look into the Bible to discover these truths and to discover the things that He says in His Word. Let's begin first by setting this firm foundation that the Bible was written in a very unique way. The Bible was written over a span of about 1,500 years by about 40 authors, some who were kings, some who were prophets, some who were priests, people from different backgrounds, and more specifically, people from different times and different spaces. God used those different people to speak to His people in those times as well as in our time. 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 20 and 21 teaches us that it is God who reveals Himself to His prophets so that these prophets can reveal the character, nature, and will of God to humanity. The Bible then tells us in the book of Psalm 119 verse 105 that your word is a lamp for my feet and a light for my path. In other words, the Bible is a roadmap for life. When we read the Bible, God opens our eyes to see the path that we must walk. He opens our hearts to know His will for our lives. The Bible is not just a roadmap for our lives today, but it is also a revelation of the will of God for this time as well as the time to come. When we read God's Word, when we read the Bible, we read or we realize the revelation of the will of God. The will of God contained in the Ten Commandments, the will of God contained in the expression of His character and the way in which He deals with humanity. When we read the Bible, we also discover timeless truths and relevant messages, not just for the times in which the prophets and the men of God lived, but also for our time. The Bible was relevant and was true for those people to whom God spoke in their time, but it is also relevant for us today. The Bible is no common book. Hebrews chapter 4 verse 12 tells us that God's word is timeless. It is alive and active. It is sharper than a double-edged sword. It penetrates even to the dividing of the soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges the thoughts and the attitudes of man. The Bible is no common book. It is not like the many books that we find in our libraries today. It is not like the books that we read and jest about, but it is a book that contains in it a timeless message for humanity. It is a book that reveals the love of God for humanity. It is in the Bible that we find that from the very onset, it is God who created humanity out of the dust of the earth. Genesis chapter 2 verse 17 tells us that God stooped to the earth and He formed man out of the dust of the earth, and He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. He did so because in Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 to 28 tells us that He reasoned in His mind that let us create man in our image, in our likeness. And so God created him, male and female. In chapter 3 of the book of Revelation, we find, in the book of Genesis, we find that indeed humanity falls off the rails and removes from the will and purpose for which it was created. And when sin enters the world, there is a separation between humanity and God. But alas, in the book of John chapter 3 and verse 16, we find that God gave Himself through Jesus for the salvation of humanity. It is through Jesus that we find the true epitome of God's love for humanity. It is because God loved that He gave Himself so that humanity could be redeemed. In the book of Revelation, beginning with chapter 1 and going all the way to chapter 22, we discover that it is God's plan that he should be reunited with humanity. So allow me to say that it is going to be a beautiful journey of discovery, a discovery of the will of God, a discovery of the nature of God, a discovery of the relationship between God and humanity, and a discovery of the truth, the many truths that touch our lives in various ways. Come with me as we journey together in search of the truth, as we search God's word.